Shalom, shalom, shalom. Giving all praise to Yehovah, Shemel, Shaiba, Shemakakwadash. Nawathan Kal, Halalium, La Yahweh, Shemel, Shaiba, Shem, Rakag, Kwadash. I'm going to entitle this video Acts 18, verse 2. Why did Claudius expel the Israelites from Rome? So I'm going to read the precept. You know what I'm going to do? We come to the first verse. Acts 18, verse 1. After these things, Paul departed from Athens because you had Israelites living up in Athens. If you go to Acts, the previous chapter, Acts 17, he encounters men of Athens, which were Israelites. Don't listen to this clown vocab. See, they were white people. You know what made Egypt, not Egypt, well, what made Egypt great? An Israelite, Joseph. What made Greece or the Hellenes or the Hellenistas, because they were called Hellenes, which is another way of saying Greece. We commonly know it as Greece. Who or what people made Greece great? We did. Anywhere we went. When you go to Africa, the west coast of Africa, that's where all the greatness is coming out of, the west coast of Africa. Why? Because you have Israelites all throughout the west coast. You also have Israelites spread throughout Africa. Anywhere you go, if there's greatness happening in Africa, you best believe those people are Israelites thinking that they're Africans. It says, after these things, Paul departed from Athens and came to Corinth. You have a book called the Book of First Corinthians, Second Corinthians. Who was Paul speaking to in Corinth? He was speaking to Israelites. You had Israelites that knew that they were Israelites, and you had Israelites that did not know that they were Israelites being called Gentiles. Go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12, the first couple of verses. Acts 18, verse 1, after these things, Paul departed from Athens, and where Israelites dwelt, and came to Corinth. It's not just about reading the Bible. It's reading the Bible and then understanding the Bible by other documents. You have to know the Greek, you have to know the Hebrew, you have to know maps, you have to know history, you have to know how to link history with the scriptures, secular history. Like, for example, if you go to Daniel 7, I always mention these prophecies, Daniel 7, and it speaks, or Daniel 2, it speaks about that statue, the head of gold, the breasts, like the breasts and the shoulders of silver. Any historian, even some historian that's not even into the scriptures, and if you're a historian of ancient societies, ancient kingdoms, you have to get into the Bible. The scriptures. If I go to Google right now and I put in Antiochus Epiphanes, guess what source book they're going to give me? The Apocrypha, First Maccabees and Second Maccabees. So you're forced, if you want to learn history, you are forced to go into the scriptures. So let me do this. Now, this is what I found. Check this out. Okay, I marked it. Where is it? Bear me for a minute. Oh, I'm sorry. I got to go to the second verse commentary. Bear me for a minute. Okay, this is what I wanted. I want to read the precept, Acts 18, verse 2. So Acts 18 and 1 mention Athens. Paul comes from Athens. Mentions Athens and Corinth. That's a whole series of videos that you can do just on the first verse. Second verse, Acts 18, verse 2. And found a certain Jew, an Israelite, named Aquila, born in Pontus. Where's Pontus? It was outside of Palestine. For proving further that you had Israelites that were scattered, that kept the Lord's statutes and commandments. Read the book of Acts, the second chapter. Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven, meaning Israelites that were living outside of Palestine. I use the word Palestine, I can use the word Israel, whatever. Lately come from what? From Italy with his wife Priscilla, because that Claudius had commanded all Jews, gave an order to depart from Rome and came unto them. Okay, so what does that mean for you Christians out there? Why did he kick them out of Rome? How did they get into Rome? Are they Israelites? It says, man, found a man, a certain Jew, and his wife was named Priscilla. They were Israelites. And they were Israelites that kept the Lord's statutes and commandments. Aquila wasn't a convert. Or a proselyte. Well, he wasn't a proselyte in the fact that he came to know the Messiah. Anyway, I didn't even read all of this. I just jumped right to this one because I always go to the Cambridge. Let me see. You know what? Let me go to Cambridge first. Let me mark this down because that Claudius had commanded all Jews to depart from Rome. And let me come down here. I normally go to Cambridge, Cambridge Bible for Schools and Colleges. A certain Jew named Aquila. Now that word, they say it's a Latin word. I'm not going to go all into it, but he was a Jew. He was an Israelite. Okay, born in Pontus, and a man of Pontus by race. But what does that mean? What does it mean by race? He was an Israelite. He wasn't a so-called white man. Anyway, this is what I wanted. Claudius had commanded all Jews to depart from Rome. Let's see what Cambridge has to say about it. The Jews were often objects of persecution in Rome, but this particular occasion is probably that mentioned by Suetonius, Claudius 25. This guy is a historian. That's a whole nother lesson. He speaks about the Messiah. He calls the Messiah Christos, where we read that by reason of Jewish or Israelite tumults, look up the word tumults, that's riots, that's protest, that's war, that's raising hell. And we that go out on the highways and the byways, we would be categorized as tumults, as protests. When we go out there, Esau looks at it as a form of protest. He also looks at it as he also labels it sedition. Look up the word sedition. Sedition does not mean what they're trying to get Donald J. Trump on, the Teflon Don on, is sedition, meaning he didn't do nothing. He didn't shoot a gun. He didn't hit nobody with a hammer, a baseball bat. He didn't bust in the window. He didn't bust through the doors of the Capitol. He didn't set anything on fire in D.C., but they're saying he was the one that gave the order, the go-ahead. And the fact that he didn't do anything about it, being the chief executive officer, which is the president, all right, or commander in chief, The word emperor, as in the Roman emperors, the word emperor is Latin. That means commander, commander in chief. So they're trying to get him. You want to get the ringleader. You want to get the guy. Well, I didn't do anything, but yeah, but we got you on record telling people what to do. So that's what they. That's how they look at us. That's why. Why do you think they were able to kill? Why did they ultimately kill Peter and the Apostle Paul, James, and the rest of the apostles except for John? Because what was the charge? That's a whole nother lesson. So if you don't have nothing to talk, I don't have a lesson. I don't know what to talk. That's a whole nother lesson. Based on the little time that I've been doing this video, I've been throwing out key phrases and buzzwords, which are nothing but lessons, man. Let me read that again. The Jews were often objects of persecution in Rome, but this particular occasion is probably that mentioned by Suetonius, Claude for Claudius 25. This is in his documents. So he spoke about the Messiah. He spoke about the emperor. He spoke about the new emperor that came in and the way the old emperor died. Or anyway, he was like the a newspaper writer, so you can understand, in the form of documents. Documents is nothing but news, where we read that by reason of Jewish tumult, protests, sedition, riots, wars, race riots, whatever, at the instigation of one Christos, Christos or Christos, Greek and Latin, Christos, Christos, which is the Messiah, because they were all riled up over the Messiah. It says they were driven out of the city, whether this was the name of some Jew then resident in Rome, or whether, wait a minute, whether this was the name of some Jew then resident in Rome. So you had Jews living in Rome, or whether it is that's why the Apostle Paul uses Roman status. He was a Roman citizen out of not Tarshish, Tarshish, yep. And it says a Tarshish, not a mean city, meaning this was a major city that he came out of. Whether it is a reference to some disturbance that had risen from the Jewish expectation of the Messiah, because you know what they were going back and forth on? The ones that followed the Messiah, they all thought that the Lord was coming back in their lifetime. Read Acts chapter 1, from the top, the whole chapter, mainly like the 5th, 6th verse. Will thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? Now the Lord could have said, what are you talking about? First of all, I'm coming for everybody. He would have said that. He would have corrected the guy. When that disciple said that apostle said what he said the kingdom are you going to bring it to Israel? He could have been corrected, as I've said. So there was a lot of uproar over the Christos, the Messiah. And this is the second. This is why this is called the second book, the second book of Acts. The next Acts. You had the Acts. What does the word Acts mean? The book of Acts. It means actions. So this is Acts all over again. It says the thing with Ye or Kanye and Kyrie Irving, which this is news as of this morning, last night, Saturday night, after a game. I believe they lost to Indiana, if I'm not mistaken. So that's more controversy. And the more these people, these small hats, they should just lay low. Because when you bring it out and you try to, put them on blast, that's making us think. That's making these jakes that have cross, walk by a camp, and it's important for you guys. Oh, the camps. No, the controversies come from the camps. These different groups, and this is getting out of hand. Esau got to do something. It says of the Christ. I'm just reading it, or Messiah, which is Hebrew Mashiach for anointed. Christ means christened, anointed. And the name Christos, which is we talking about the Messiah, is mistakenly used by Suetonios as though it were that of some agitator actually present, because they didn't know. The Edomites didn't know about the Messiah. He came for his people. That's what the angel Gabriel told Joseph in the dream. He will save his people. So they're talking about Christos and the Messiah and Yahushua. Who the hell is that? But Jake knew. We cannot tell. Or it may have been some movement of the Jews against the Christians because they taught that the Christ was already come. Yeah, because you had some of the Israelite Jews that dismissed the fact that he came already. In that case, the name Christos would come into great prominence and might give rise to the statement of Suetonius that a person of that name had been the instigator of the disturbances. See, this is the time for the IUIC to march around them synagogues. Okay, so this is Ellicott's commentary for English readers. That's a lot of information right there. Let's see what we can glean out of this. Okay, so it says because that Claudius had commanded all Jews, Israelites, to depart from Rome. The account, and remember at that time, they were against the Jews and they were against the Christians. They were feeding the Christians to animals, and in their arenas. It says the account of the expulsion is given by Suetonius Claudius C-25 in words which are in many ways suggested Claudius Judeos impulso Christos assidu vermi timotuntes tomo Roma expolit to get rid of. Now this is the interpretation. Claudius expelled. Remember, the English language came from it's a Romantic language. It came from Latin. Expelled, expolet the Jews, Judoias, from Rome, Roma, on account of their continued tumults, tumultontes, instigated by Christos, Claudius Judeos impulsor Christos, because they call them Christos. That's why they call them in Acts, what is that? Acts 11 and 25. They were first called Christos in Antioch. Antioch was outside of Palestine. So that's where you get the term Christian. So who are the real Christians? The Israelites. The ones that followed the Christos. This is your secular history. Go to Google and put the same thing. It's going to tell you the same thing. It's going to mention this guy, this this individual right here, this documentarian, this scholar, this newspaper writer. That was the news. That's how you got the news, but then you go, he speaks about Christos, although he never met Christos. When Christos was on the scene, he was probably a kid. He was not in Israel. It says Claudius expelled the Jews from Rome on account of their continued tumults raising hell instigated by Christos, the Jews, at this period. Now, what's going to happen if Ye gets put to death or something like that, or Kyrie gets put to death? That could cause a tumult, major tumults in this, because Vocab said that he did some research and found out that about 13 million Negroes, Judah, identify with Israelism, not the rest of the tribes. It says was settled mainly in the Transiberan region of Rome at the base of Geniculum, opposite the present, opposite the present ghetto or Jewry. Jewry is synonymous with ghetto of the city. So they had ghettos back in Rome. They exercised considerable influence over the upper classes, had synagogues and oratories, theaters. Acts 16 and 13, Luke 6 and 12, I'm not going to go into it, of their own were tolerated as possessing a religio lecita, had their own ceremonies and Appian Way. Suddenly there is a change in their relations to the civil power, the Roman rulership, and the name of Christos is connected with it. Of the man whom he so mentions, Suetonius tells us nothing further, but we know that the sounds of the Greek I and E were hardly distinguishable, right? Because there was no J. Says that the name of Christos was almost invariably pronounced Christos, or I guess you say Christos, and as the word signifies good, useful, honest, funds a kind of argumentum ad hominem, on a prevalent mistake. So in Jewish inscription in the Lateran Museum, I guess that's Latin, Alpheus appears as the equivalent for the Greek form Alpheus. The probable explanation of Claudius, which is the emperor, decree according is that men had come to Rome after the day of what? Pentecost. Where is Pentecost spoken about? In Acts, the 2nd chapter. Jews, devout men from every nation under heaven. And one of those nations that they came out of, to Jerusalem for the Passover and the Pentecost, was Rome. And then they went back to Rome and made pilgrimages, proclaiming Jesus is the Christ. That, I'm reading it verbatim, that this had been followed by tumults like those of which we read in Pisidian Antioch, Acts 13 and 50. What does it say? Acts 13 and 50. But the Jews stirred up the devout and honorable woman and the chief men of the city and raised persecution against Paul and Barnabas and expelled them out of their coast because they didn't want to hear that the Messiah came. That the Messiah is yet to come. That's what they were teaching. And then it even goes into Acts 17:7, whom Jason has received. I can hardly read this. See this? Whom Jason has received, and these all do contrary to the decrees of Caesar. They weren't following Caesar, saying that there is another king, one Jesus. I'm reading it verbatim. And so this is happening all over again. There's a lot of information here. And they pretty much all say the same thing. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say shalom on to the next one.